Airport security marched a quiet, night-shift maintenance worker out of the terminal after stolen medical cargo was found in his locker. Hours later, a little girl's forgotten tablet captured one frame that made the supervisor stop smiling. At 2:17 every morning, the lights along runway 9 at Great Lakes Regional Airport flickered once, then steadied into a clean white line stretching into the Michigan dark. Most people never noticed. Pilots saw the lights as guidance. Passengers saw them as glitter through an oval window. Airport executives saw them as infrastructure, line items in a budget. Ethan Cole saw them as a promise. If the lights stayed on, somebody got home. That was enough for him. Ethan was 52 years old, broad-shouldered in a quiet way, with close-cropped gray hair, and the kind of face people forgot until they needed help. He lived alone in a small apartment off Airport Road, above a closed-down insurance office and across from a 24-hour diner where the waitress already knew he took his coffee black. To everyone at Great Lakes Regional, Ethan was just the night shift maintenance tech. He fixed automatic doors that froze in Michigan winters. He checked backup generators. He replaced runway bulbs in sleet. He crawled through service corridors that smelled like dust, grease, and old wiring. He reset fire alarms, unclogged drains, patched ceiling tiles, and knew exactly which electrical panel had been mislabeled in 1998 and never corrected. He wore navy work pants, steel-toed boots, and a faded airport maintenance jacket with Cole stitched over the chest. Nobody knew he had once worn a different name. Nobody knew that before he was Ethan Cole, airport maintenance tech, he had been Master Sergeant Ethan Cole, Delta Force operator, call sign Rook. Nobody at Great Lakes knew he had crossed borders without uniforms, walked into hostage compounds under moonless skies, and come home with men and women who never would have survived without him. He did not hang medals on his wall. He did not attend veterans' breakfasts. He did not correct people when they called him just the handyman. He had buried that life with the men who had not made it back. All Ethan wanted now was a normal job, a predictable schedule, and enough quiet to sleep through the night without waking to phantom alarms. But quiet never lasted. It only waited. The first time people at the airport realized Ethan was different, they didn't call him a hero. They called him lucky. An elderly woman's motorized wheelchair jammed halfway down a jet bridge during boarding. The airline staff panicked, one of them fumbling with the controls while passengers backed up in irritation behind her. Ethan happened to be passing with a tool bag over his shoulder. He crouched, found the manual release, disengaged the lock, and pushed the woman safely into the aircraft before the gate agent could finish calling a supervisor. When the woman grabbed his hand and thanked him with tears in her eyes, Ethan only said, "Ma'am, anybody would have done the same." Another time, a young kitchen worker named Marisol got trapped in a walk-in cooler near the catering bay. Her radio battery had died. Everyone assumed she had gone on break. Ethan noticed a strange fogging pattern on the cooler window, like someone had been breathing hard against the glass. He overrode the latch and found her sitting on the floor, lips blue, hands shaking. He wrapped her in his jacket and stayed with her until paramedics arrived. Masher. "Cole saved my life," she told anyone who would listen. Ethan avoided the break room for 3 days after that. Then there was the baggage system failure on the Friday before Thanksgiving, when hundreds of passengers were about to miss connections because the conveyor belts had seized. Contractors were 40 minutes out. Supervisors were yelling. Travelers were filming on phones. Ethan opened the side panel, studied the stripped drive assembly, and rigged a manual bypass with 2 cargo straps, a wrench, and an old motor housing that nobody else had recognized as useful. Within 15 minutes, bags were moving again. The airport operations manager clapped him on the shoulder and said, "Cole, you just saved us from a riot." Ethan looked down at his grease-blackened hands and said, "Just needed a little persuasion." That was Ethan. Always there. Always calm. Always disappearing before applause could find him. The person Ethan trusted most at the airport was Mark Danner, the night security shift supervisor. Mark was 48, handsome in a tired way, with slicked back hair, a sharp uniform, and the uneasy confidence of a man who needed people to believe his stories. He had served in Iraq years earlier in a logistics support unit. Ethan had known him only briefly back then, under circumstances neither of them spoke about. Mark spoke about them anyway. He told younger officers that he and Ethan had been through hell together. He said they had survived an ambush outside Fallujah. He said Ethan had dragged him out of a burning vehicle. That last part was true. The rest depended on how much Mark had been drinking and who was listening. Ethan never corrected him. He understood what shame did to men. He understood how some men built armor out of exaggeration because the truth felt too small to survive in. But Mark's gratitude had soured over the years into something darker. He liked Ethan, or told himself he did. But he also resented him. Ethan never bragged, never asked for attention, never chased authority. And somehow people trusted him more than they trusted Mark. That gnawed at Mark. Mark had left the army with no medals worth mentioning. A divorce, gambling debt, and a deep belief that life owed him compensation. When he became night security supervisor at Great Lakes Regional, he decided this was finally his stage. He wanted to be seen as the man in control. Then Ethan Cole kept quietly saving people. The incident that changed everything began with a false fire alarm in the international terminal. It was just after midnight, with snow blowing sideways against the glass walls and a delayed Chicago flight boarding at gate C-12. The alarm screamed through the concourse. Strobe lights flashed. Passengers surged toward exits. A tired mother, Rachel Bennett, lost her grip on her 6-year-old daughter's hand. "Lily?" Rachel shouted. "Lily!" The crowd swallowed the little girl. Security officers scrambled. Airline staff pointed in conflicting directions. Mark stood near the center of the chaos, barking into his radio. "Hold the perimeter. Nobody leaves the terminal until we verify." Ethan had been replacing a faulty exit sign near the service hallway. He stepped back, scanned the moving crowd, and said nothing. Panic had patterns. Children didn't always run toward exits. They ran toward gaps, toward quiet, toward spaces adults ignored. Ethan looked at the flight information screens hanging above the concourse. In their glossy reflection, he caught a glimpse of a small pink coat slipping through a staff-only door near the freight elevator. He moved immediately. No shouting. No drama. He crossed behind a row of kiosks, keyed open the service door, and descended into the dim corridor beyond. The alarm was muffled there, pulsing through concrete walls. He found Lily crouched beside a fire door, sobbing into her sleeve, clutching a tablet against her chest. Ethan stopped 10 feet away and lowered himself to one knee. "Hey there," he said softly. "You must be Lily." She looked up, frightened. "My name's Ethan. I fix things around here." He pointed to the badge on his jacket. "See? That alarm's loud, isn't it?" She nodded. "I don't like it much either. How about we go find your mom? Am I in trouble?" "No, ma'am. You're just lost. Those are two different things." He offered his hand, palm up, and waited. Lily took it. When Ethan brought her back into the terminal, Rachel Bennett collapsed around her daughter, crying so hard she could barely speak. "Thank you," she whispered. "Oh my God, thank you." Passengers applauded. A gate agent wiped her eyes. Even airport police looked relieved. Mark stood 10 yards away, his radio still in hand, his smile fixed and brittle. For the first time, Ethan noticed the look in Mark's eyes. It wasn't gratitude. It was calculation. 3 days later, at the weekly safety meeting, Airport Director Charles Whitmore praised Ethan in front of department heads. Musher. Cole's awareness prevented what could have become a serious missing child incident, Whitmore said. That kind of calm under pressure deserves recognition. Mark leaned forward before the sentence had finished. With respect, sir, security had already identified the likely corridor. My team coordinated the response. Ethan was in the area because I directed maintenance to check the fire door. The room went quiet. Everyone knew that wasn't true. Ethan looked down at the conference table and said nothing. Whitmore hesitated, then nodded awkwardly. "Well, good work by everyone," Mark smiled. Ethan's silence had been meant as mercy. Mark took it as permission. After that, Ethan's assignments changed. He got the dirtiest jobs, the latest calls, the restricted mechanical rooms where nobody wanted to go alone. Mark would slap him on the back in front of others and say, "Cole's my guy. Always dependable." Then he'd send Ethan to check a malfunctioning alarm panel in an unheated tunnel at 3 a.m. Ethan accepted every task without complaint. But he began to notice things. Medical cargo trucks arriving after midnight that didn't match posted schedules. Security cameras in Corridor C losing signal for exactly 11 minutes. Temporary access badges issued under vendor names that didn't appear in the airport's contractor database. And Mark. Always near the high-value cargo area when he claimed in reports to be patrolling somewhere else. Ethan did not accuse him. Accusations without proof were noise. So Ethan did what he had done in places far more dangerous than Michigan. He watched. He documented. He wrote times in a small pocket notebook. He saved maintenance logs. He told the maintenance manager that the cameras in Sector C showed signs of outside tampering. The next night, a refrigerated shipment of cancer medication worth millions disappeared from the secure cargo vault. By morning, Ethan Cole was the prime suspect. Mark presented the evidence with the heavy sadness of a man forced to betray a friend. Ethan had been the last employee to swipe into a technical room near the cargo area. A grainy security clip showed someone his height pushing a maintenance cart down the corridor. Inside Ethan's locker, airport police found a cut cargo seal and an envelope containing $5,000 in cash. Ethan stared at the items on the table. He knew immediately what had happened. The video was staged. The locker was planted. The original footage would be gone. "What time was the raw file overwritten?" Ethan asked. Mark sighed. "Ethan, don't make this worse. I want the access logs. You don't have clearance anymore." Airport Director Whitmore looked devastated. "Ethan, pending investigation, I have to suspend you." Ethan nodded once. No shouting, no pleading. As he walked out of the terminal with 2 officers behind him, employees turned away. Some looked ashamed. Others looked afraid. Marisol, the kitchen worker he had saved, opened her mouth as if to say something, then closed it. At the service gate, Ethan saw a white box truck parked by the curb. No front plate. Temporary rear tag. The driver wore black gloves despite the mild weather. Ethan memorized the man's face. But nobody wanted observations from a suspected thief. Mark didn't stop there. He filed a report claiming Ethan had threatened security staff during the locker search. A young officer named Ben Carter signed as witness. Ben was 23, nervous, and too new to understand how quickly one lie could become a cage. Mark had leverage on him. Ben had fallen asleep during a shift weeks earlier. Mark had buried it until he needed him. Then Mark spread another rumor. Ethan had combat trauma. Ethan was unstable. Ethan had always been off. When a backup generator failed in the North Terminal, Mark suggested Ethan might have sabotaged it before suspension. Local news picked up the story by evening. Airport employee under investigation for theft. Possible sabotage. Ethan watched the report from his apartment kitchen. The TV light flickered over the room. There were no family photos on the walls, no souvenirs, just a wooden box on the top shelf of a cabinet, covered in dust. Inside that box were things Ethan never looked at. A folded flag from a teammate's memorial. A black and white photo of 7 men outside a helicopter. A Silver Star citation with most of the mission details redacted. Ethan took the box down, opened it, then closed it again. His hands trembled. He had survived enemies who wanted him dead. He had survived rooms full of gunfire, deserts full of ghosts, and the silence after telling a wife her husband wasn't coming home. But this felt different. He had been betrayed by a man he once pulled from fire. He had been abandoned by a workplace he had quietly protected. And worst of all, he realized his own silence had given a corrupt man room to grow. The knock came at 8:43 p.m. Ethan opened the door and found Dr. Rachel Bennett standing in the hallway, Lily half hidden behind her coat. "I'm sorry to come here," Rachel said. "But Lily told me something about the night she got lost." Lily held up her tablet. "I was recording," she said quietly. "I forgot." Ethan invited them in. The video was shaky and mostly showed the floor, Lily's shoes, and flashing alarm lights. But in the background, through the service door window, Mark Danner appeared clearly. He was not directing evacuation from the security center as he had claimed. He was opening a restricted service door for a man wearing a temporary badge. The same man Ethan had seen driving the plateless truck. Ethan watched the clip twice. Rachel looked at him. "Does this help?" "It helps," Ethan said. "But it's not enough. Enough for what? To stop what's coming next." He asked Rachel's permission to copy the file. She agreed without hesitation. Ethan saved it to a small encrypted thumb drive he kept in his tool bag, then handed the tablet back to Lily. "You did good," he told her. Lily looked down at the screen. "I didn't know I was helping." "Most people don't," Ethan said. "Not at first." The second crack in Mark's wall came from Ben Carter. He met Ethan at a roadside diner the next afternoon, pale and sweating, hands wrapped around a coffee he never drank. "He made me sign it," Ben said. "The statement about you threatening us. It wasn't true." Ethan said nothing. He let the young man breathe. Ben swallowed. "Mark said if I didn't, he'd report me for sleeping on duty. I'd lose my job, maybe never work security again." "Why tell me now?" "Because he's planning something tomorrow night." Ben leaned closer. "He called it the final transfer. Said the airport's doing that cybersecurity drill, so half the systems will be manual. He said after tomorrow, everybody gets paid and it all goes away." Ethan's eyes hardened. "What are they moving?" "I don't know." Ethan did. Or at least he knew enough. The stolen cancer drugs had never been the objective. They had been a test run. Mark had opened doors for organized criminals. Let them study the airport. Let them learn response times. Let them see how evidence could be planted. And Ethan had been chosen as the fall guy. Ethan was preparing to take what he had to the FBI when his phone rang. It was Airport Director Whitmore. His voice sounded strained. "Ethan, I'm sorry to do this, but the board chair and legal counsel want an emergency termination hearing tonight at 10:30. Ethan looked at the dark window above his kitchen sink. Snow had begun sliding sideways under the streetlights. "A termination hearing," Ethan said. "Mark believes delaying exposes the airport to liability. With the media pressure and the security allegations, they want to finalize your separation before tomorrow's federal audit. Mark believes that." Whitmore exhaled. "I know how it sounds." "No," Ethan said. "You don't." There was silence on the line. Whitmore lowered his voice. "If you have anything that explains this, bring it tonight." After the call, Ethan stood still for a long moment. He knew a trap when someone dressed it up as procedure. Rachel called 10 minutes later. Whitmore had contacted her too after she left a message saying she had evidence that could clear Ethan. "I'm coming," she said. "I'm bringing the tablet." "No," Ethan told her. "Stay home." "Mr. Cole, you saved my daughter. That doesn't make this your fight." "It does to me." Ethan closed his eyes. He could hear Lily in the background asking if the man who fixes things was in trouble. "Dar Bennett," Ethan said quietly. "If you come, don't go anywhere alone. Stay in public areas. Do not hand that tablet to anyone except Whitmore or federal law enforcement. I understand." But Rachel did not understand the kind of man she was walking toward. At 10:19 that night, Rachel Bennett arrived at Great Lakes Regional holding Lily's hand. She had not wanted to bring her daughter, but her babysitter had canceled, and Lily had insisted she wasn't scared as long as they were helping Ethan. The terminal was half empty, washed in cold fluorescent light. Snow scraped against the glass. A few stranded passengers slept across rows of seats with coats over their faces. Mark Danner met them near the security desk. "Dr. Bennett!" he said warmly. "Thank you for coming in. Muster Whitmore is tied up with legal counsel, but I'll escort you." Rachel tightened her grip on Lily's hand. "I was told the meeting was in administration. Changed at the last minute." North Terminal Conference Room. "Quieter over there," she hesitated. Mark glanced down at Lily's tablet. "Is that the device?" "Yes. I'll need to log that as evidence." Rachel pulled it closer. "I'd rather hand it directly to Master Whitmore." Mark's smile thinned. "Ma'am, this is an active criminal investigation involving airport security. Evidence chain of custody matters. If you want it admissible, it has to be logged properly." Lily stepped behind her mother's coat. Rachel looked around for another official, but the security desk was empty. Mark had made sure of that. "I want a receipt," she said. "Of course." He took the tablet, placed it in a clear evidence sleeve, and scribbled a case number on a form. His hand covered most of what he wrote. Then he tore off the bottom copy and handed it to Rachel. Right this way, instead of taking them toward administration, Mark led them through a side corridor toward the North Terminal passenger holding area. Rachel stopped. "This doesn't look right." "Construction detour," Mark said. "Cybersecurity drill prep has half the doors locked down. We're keeping outside witnesses in a secure waiting area until legal is ready." "Witnesses?" Mark's eyes flicked toward Lily. "People who want to involve themselves." The words were soft, but something in them made Rachel's stomach turn. Before she could answer, Mark opened a glass door into the North Terminal holding area. About 30 passengers waited there due to weather delays and a grounded connection. A few medical transport workers stood near the cargo wing entrance with rolling cases. Mark guided Rachel and Lily inside. "Wait here," he said. Then he stepped back out and locked the door. Rachel rushed to the glass. "Officer Danner?" Mark did not turn around. At 10:41 p.m., Ethan entered the airport through an old maintenance access on the west side. He had no intention of sitting in a conference room while Mark staged the final act of a lie. He needed backup server logs from a mechanical control station that the main security office often forgot existed. If Mark had deleted video from the central system, there might still be a shadow copy in the building automation archive. Ethan moved through service corridors he knew better than his own dreams. At 11:03, he found what he needed. Deleted access events, forged badge permissions. A security workstation login under Mark's ID at the exact time Ethan's locker had been opened. Ethan copied the logs onto the thumb drive beside Lily's video. At 11:06 p.m., Great Lakes Regional went dark in all the wrong ways. The gate coordination system crashed first. Flight boards flashed nonsense. Electronic doors locked or opened at random. Badge readers failed. Dispatch radios crackled with interference. At 11:11, the 3 men dressed as medical transport workers in the North Terminal holding area opened their rolling cases. They were not carrying medical supplies. They were armed. Within 6 minutes, they had taken more than 40 hostages. Among them were Rachel, Bennett, and Lily. They placed an improvised explosive device near the auxiliary mechanical room and threatened to detonate it if police breached the terminal. Their real target was not medicine. It was a federally monitored shipment of sensitive biological research material being transferred through Great Lakes under Homeland Security supervision. Mark Danner had thought he was helping smugglers. He had told himself no one would get hurt. He had told himself the people he was dealing with only wanted cargo, that the stolen cancer drugs had been a profitable rehearsal, that the final job would make his debts disappear. But criminals do not honor the fantasies of desperate men. They used the access he had provided, locked down escape routes, hijacked security feeds, and made Mark their voice to the police outside. And when Mark realized he had lost control, he did what cowards do. He blamed Ethan. Over the radio, Mark told responding units, "Ethan Cole is inside the facility. Suspended employee. Mechanically skilled. Possible accomplice. Consider him dangerous." An internal detain order went out within minutes. Ethan heard it over an open security channel while crouched beside a mechanical control panel, the thumb drive warm in his palm. He could have left. He could have waited outside. He could have let the police sort through the wreckage of Mark Danner's lies. Then he heard Lily crying over the radio. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a small, terrified sound beneath the shouting. Ethan closed his eyes. The old life opened beneath him like a trap door. When he opened them again, the maintenance tech was still there. But so was Rook. Ethan had no weapon, no badge, no authority. He had something better. He knew the airport, not the public maps, not the polished evacuation routes printed on signs. He knew the bones of the place, the forgotten crawl spaces, the mechanical bypasses, the utility tunnel built before the North Terminal renovation, the old fire doors that could be opened by hand if you knew which panel to remove. He moved through the walls while the airport above him panicked. He found 6 kitchen employees trapped near a catering corridor and guided them through a maintenance duct. He used a fire extinguisher to create a white cloud across a camera blind spot, shielding a wounded baggage handler as 2 workers dragged him to safety. He made one mistake. A motion sensor had been installed during a recent upgrade. Ethan missed it by inches. A secondary alarm chirped. One of the armed men turned the corner and caught Ethan in the corridor. The man swung first, catching Ethan on the shoulder with the butt of his weapon. Ethan hit the wall hard. Blood opened above his eyebrow. The man raised the weapon again. Ethan stepped in, not back. One hand trapped the barrel. The other locked the man's wrist. Ethan turned his hips, drove him into the wall, stripped the weapon free, and pinned him face down with an arm bar so efficient it looked almost gentle. The man screamed. Ethan zip-tied him with luggage straps and shoved the weapon out of reach. Then he dragged him to an emergency exit and pushed him toward 2 stunned airport police officers outside. "Take him," Ethan said. One officer raised his gun. "Cole! Hands where I can see them!" Ethan lifted his hands slowly. Then another hostage screamed over the radio. Ethan looked at the officer. "You can arrest me now, or you can let me get those people out." The officer hesitated. Ethan disappeared back into the corridor. Outside, the command center was chaos. Airport police, county SWAT, FBI, Homeland Security, fire rescue. Everyone wanted control. Nobody had accurate interior access because the digital systems were compromised. Special Agent Maria Alvarez of the FBI stood over a live feed, watching a gray-haired maintenance worker move through a service corridor with blood on his face and total composure in his body. Something about the way he moved froze her. Years earlier, in Afghanistan, when she had been a young Army liaison officer, her convoy had been ambushed in a dry riverbed. She remembered smoke, screaming, and a man pulling her behind cover while rounds snapped through the air. She remembered his call sign, Rook. Alvarez turned sharply. "Run Ethan Cole through Federal Restricted Service records." A technician frowned. "Ma'am, he's airport maintenance. Run him." The first search returned almost nothing. Then Homeland Security Liaison Thomas Greer arrived, saw the name on the screen, and went still. "Where did you get that name?" Alvarez looked at him. "You know him?" Greer lowered his voice. "If that's the Ethan Cole I think it is, open a secure channel. Now." The file came back heavily redacted. Most of the missions were blacked out, but enough remained. Yacht S, Army Special Operations Command, Delta Force, multiple classified hostage rescue operations, Silver Star, Defense Distinguished Service Commendation, Retired Master Sergeant. Special Agent Alvarez took the radio. "Command to all units," she said. "Update on Ethan Cole. He is not to be treated as a hostile unless he presents an immediate threat. Repeat, do not engage Ethan Cole." The SWAT commander turned. "Why?" Greer looked at him. "Because the man you've been hunting is probably the best chance those hostages have." A secure radio crackled. "Cole, this is FBI command. Do you read?" A pause. Then Ethan's voice came back, low and steady. "I read." The SWAT commander stepped closer. Master Cole, Alvarez corrected him softly. Master Sergeant Cole. The command center fell silent. Ethan did not react to the title. Don't use that, he said. I need thermal imaging, manual override access to fire doors North 2 and North 3, and confirmation your shooters will hold fire unless they have clear identification. The SWAT commander stared at the radio, chastened. Understood. Priority is hostages, Ethan said. Not me. Working with Alvarez, Ethan split the attackers without firing a shot. He used the ventilation system to carry false sound down an east corridor, making 2 gunmen believe police were entering from the wrong side. He cut localized power to a roll-up security door, forcing another attacker out of his line of sight. He guided Rachel Bennett by radio after reaching a wall phone in the holding area and told her how to keep the hostages low behind baggage carts. Is Lily with you? Ethan asked. Rachel's voice shook. Yes, Ethan. Mark took her tablet. He locked us in here. Ethan's jaw tightened. For 1 second, the betrayal became personal in a way he could feel in his bones. Then he buried it. Listen to me, he said. That wasn't your fault. We came to help you. I know. Now let me help you. Lily's tiny voice came through next. Mesher! Ethan! I'm here, sweetheart. Are you still fixing things? Ethan looked down the dark service passage, blood dripping from his eyebrow onto the concrete. Yes, ma'am, he said. I'm still fixing things. The bomb was in the auxiliary mechanical room. Ethan reached it through a cable tunnel barely wide enough for his shoulders. It wasn't like the movies. He didn't clip a red wire with 1 second left. He studied the device, saw the detonator tied into a backup power feed, and isolated the circuit from an adjacent panel. Then he wedged a fire door into a partially closed position to reduce blast pressure if the device failed safe. Bomb squad, he said over the radio, breathing hard. Approach through utility access delta. Do not use the main mechanical door. Repeat, do not use the main door. In the final seconds, one of the gunmen saw Rachel trying to shield Lily and raised his weapon. Ethan came out of the service passage at a dead run. He slammed into a luggage cart, drove it between the gunmen and the hostages, and pulled a wounded security guard behind cover just as a shot cracked across the terminal. The round grazed Ethan's side. He dropped to 1 knee but did not fall. That was the opening SWAT needed. Flashlights burst through the smoke. Commands thundered. 2 attackers went down under controlled, disciplined force. The 3rd surrendered when he realized the hostages were no longer leverage. 43 hostages walked out alive. Lily came out, wrapped in her mother's coat, holding Rachel's hand so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Ethan sat against a wall, one hand pressed to his bleeding side, refusing a stretcher until every hostage was counted. Mark Danner tried to slip away with the evacuees. He almost made it. Then officers found him in the security office, attempting to wipe a workstation. Lily's tablet was in an evidence sleeve on the desk beside him. The receipt he had given Rachel had no valid case number. The camera feeds he was deleting were tied to restricted door access, cargo bay movement, and Ethan's locker. The final collapse came fast. One of the captured criminals, furious that Mark had promised an easy job and no casualties, gave up the arrangement. Ben Carter confessed to the false statement. Lily's video placed Mark at the restricted door during the earlier incident. Ethan's recovered logs showed deleted footage, forged reports, unauthorized badge access, and the exact time Mark had entered Ethan's locker. During questioning, Mark made one fatal mistake. He mentioned the envelope of cash being under the left boot. No report had said where in the locker it was found. Only the person who planted it would know. Airport Director Whitmore stood behind the glass as Mark realized what he had done. The man who had wanted to be seen as a hero lowered his head. At first, he tried to justify it. He said he had debts. He said he had served his country and gotten nothing. He said Ethan didn't understand what it was like to be forgotten. Ethan, standing in the doorway with a bandage under his shirt and stitches over one eye, said quietly, I understand more than you ever knew, Mark looked at him then. Not as a maintenance man, not as a rival, not as a convenient scapegoat. For the first time, he saw him, and that made the shame unbearable. Mark Danner was arrested on charges of conspiracy, obstruction, falsifying evidence, aiding a criminal enterprise, unlawful detention, and endangering aviation security. The media wanted Ethan. He refused every interview. The airport board offered him reinstatement with back pay and a senior security consulting position. He turned down the title. I'll come back to work, Ethan said. Same shift, Whitmore blinked. Ethan, after everything. I fix things, Ethan said. That's the job. He made only 2 requests. Ben Carter would not be fired. He would be disciplined, yes, but given a chance to earn his integrity back, and the airport would create an emergency assistance fund for employees in financial crisis, so no desperate worker would feel trapped enough to sell their soul to the highest bidder. A week later, Ethan returned to the maintenance shop. On his workbench sat a folded piece of construction paper. It was a drawing from Lily. In crayon, she had drawn a man in a blue uniform holding a toolbox beneath a ceiling full of bright yellow lights. Around him, people were walking home. At the bottom, in careful 6-year-old letters, she had written, "Thank you for fixing the dark." Ethan stared at it for a long time. Then he pinned it to the wall beside the old work schedules and safety notices, not beside his medals. Those remained in the wooden box, closed. Great Lakes Regional held a small appreciation ceremony 2 weeks later. No television cameras, no podium speech from Ethan. Just a gathering near the maintenance bay, with coffee, folding chairs, and employees who didn't quite know how to apologize to a man they had doubted. Marisol hugged him and cried. Ben shook his hand with both of his and said, "I'll make it right," Ethan said. "Then start today." Dr. Bennett brought Lily, who gave him a sticker shaped like a star. Ethan put it on his toolbox without hesitation. The SWAT commander approached last. He stood straight, met Ethan's eyes, and gave him a quiet military salute. Ethan did not return it right away. For a moment, something old moved across his face. Grief, memory, the weight of names never spoken. Then he nodded and lifted 2 fingers in a small, respectful return. No one clapped. No one needed to. A few minutes later, an automatic door near gate B6 jammed halfway open. A cold wind blew into the terminal. Passengers complained. Someone looked around and said, "Where's Ethan?" He was already walking toward it, toolbox in hand, shoulders slightly bent, uniform jacket zipped to the throat. Just the night shift maintenance tech again. Just the quiet man who fixed broken things. But now, when he passed, people moved differently. They stepped aside with respect. Not because he demanded it, not because he wanted recognition, because they finally understood. Sometimes heroes don't stand on stages. Sometimes they don't wear capes, badges, or dress uniforms. Sometimes they walk past us at 2 a.m. with a ring of keys, a flashlight, and old scars hidden beneath a work shirt. They keep the lights on. They keep the doors open. And when darkness comes for the innocent, they quietly step forward and make sure somebody gets home.